Over a century has passed since we first began our journey across the sea to find the glory and the dream. Just a Taylor and a Johnny and a brother built our team. Greeted sometimes with hostility, but more often with the light. The boys who rise and had to clear through troubled skies. After constant days of struggle, they arrived in paradise. This feels like heaven. This must be the dream. This feels like paradise. The best we've ever seen. The best we've ever seen. Even through the lean years, our support will flock in thousands. Countless trophies stand displayed for all to view. By side, brothers, sisters, we're united, and our children do the same. This feels like heaven. This must be a dream. This feels like paradise. The best we've ever seen. The best we've ever seen. The above club was formed in November 1887 by a number of Catholics in the East End of the city. The main objective of the club is to supply the East End conferences of the St Vincent de Paul Society to support those in the missions of St Mary's, Sacred Heart and St Michael's. Many cases of sheer poverty are left unaided through lack of means. A football club will be formed for the maintenance of the dinner tables of our needy children. This feels like heaven. This must be the dream. This feels like paradise. The best we've ever seen. The best we've ever seen. We stand in paradise. Brothers, sisters, hand in hand. We stand in paradise. So what's the finest in the land? The finest in the land.
That's not a bad way to start off the show, is it, Brian?
Incredible, great stuff. I was kind of signing along. I had to mute myself. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. I was sort of signing along.
I could see you punching the air.
It was, and listen, one of my favourite parts of that is actually the spoken word section. It just, you know me, and the romance and the story and the sort of cinematic element of it. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. It's been doing really well as well, so long may it continue.
It has. And that's what's important. Jim mentioned that last week. As long as we can raise funds for St Mary's, that's exactly why we're doing this. It's just a different way of capturing people's attention, raising awareness. And if you like the tune, you want to help, you can stream it for free on all the usual platforms, or you can download it on the link below. It's always a pleasure to have you with us on a Friday, Jim, and you will be back with us on Christmas Day. Can you tell us a wee bit about that? 12:30, Christmas Day.
Ben like Bertie special that we did for the charity weekender last week, raising money for St Mary's, Dig Deep guys. Yeah, so you obviously are sitting here just now thinking, what should I be doing for Christmas? That last minute Christmas present. Ben like Bertie, start of February. Off you go, guys. Yeah, and Paul's been good enough to play the whole thing again at 12:30 where Des McLean and Paul John Dykes and myself spend an hour talking about Bertie Auld. So if you get a chance, watch it at 12:30 Christmas Day. Cheers.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the whole weekend, to be fair. Although, to quote a famous line out of one of my favourite films, Get Carter, my eyes were like piss holes in the snow by the end of it, looking at a screen for 26 hours. Well, there's loads to talk about, plenty to discuss. We're going to start off with some of the comments coming through. It's always a great pleasure to see those familiar names coming up, and a few names that we're not so familiar with creeping into the comment section recently. So thanks everybody for joining us. Donny Boy 67, Merry Christmas PGD and all at Acsom. And that's important because there's about 19 or 20 contributors across the board, including the boys and girls from the legendary live chat. And to all good Celtic folk the world over, much love from Doric Country, Mon the Celts indeed. I hope everybody is well. Looking forward to enjoying your Christmas with friends, family, and within the community spirit as well. Now, Magnet 67. Afternoon Acsom team looking forward to us getting back to the rip-roaring footy tomorrow. Rip-roaring. Where is Big Tony? Big Tony with his rip-roaring football. We need him back so we can start scoring some goals. We need to improve our chance creation and execution. Still think we'll see double figures. Right, let's start off with that then, Magnet. We hit 9 against Dundee United. We have destroyed teams. By the way, we destroyed Hibs 6-1 fairly recently, Brian. But again, I'm not going to say we scraped past Livingston, but let's have a look at the last 5 league games, right? Livingston 2-1, Aberdeen 1-0. Ross County 2-1, Motherwell 2-1, Dundee United 4-2 with 2 last-minute goals. I've got some of the general stats around the possession and the shots on target, which we'll get to. But if you look at those 5 fixtures collectively, and I know pre-World Cup, post-World Cup, Brian, but there is something at the moment missing. There is something that's preventing us from this rip-roaring football that we have seen under Ange Postecoglou over the last 18 months. What do you think it is?
So I think it's going to seem very harsh, but I think a lot of it comes down to the strikers and the amount of chances. And I think Ange has almost called it out by saying there's, players are supposed to be in a position and they're not. If you look at the Aberdeen game, yeah, Aberdeen were camped in, but the amount of balls, just screaming by the 6-yard box, the amount of chances, there was a lot of wasteful opportunities. And it was the same against Livingston. And it was the same in the Champions League. So the reality is, we've got to say, look, we're creating chances, so it can't be the midfield. The wingers are scoring goals. I think Kyogo's been off form, and I don't know if Giacomakis isn't starting games because he's signalled he doesn't want to be there. But there's something not quite right up front for me. Yeah. And I know you can always say, it sounds like a weird thing to say, like if you're leaking goals, it's not always just the defence. If you're not scoring, it's not always just the attack. But I think in this case, Kyogo could have scored 4 or 5 against Livingston. There was so many balls that the Kyogo last season would have buried. And I think it's just a wee bit off form. And it's, as much as we talk about having a great squad, it does concern me that if Big Ange doesn't trust Giacomakis maybe to come on and start, Kyogo's more in form, what are we going to do? Because I don't know if Maeda would be great up front as clinical either. So I think something has to change. I think Ange said as much himself. It's probably the first time he's really kind of had a wee bit of a pop at the team, I would say. Because he said he's been disappointed before, but he kind of signalled out, like, players are supposed to be in certain positions and they're not doing it, and it's unacceptable, was his phrase. He's very clearly talking about the strikers. That's reality. And even he was asked about Abada as well, and he said, well, yeah, he's doing well, but he's still not in the positions I told him to be in. So he's clearly unhappy. So I think you're going to see some changes tomorrow. But it does come down to the strikers for me at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, yesterday's tagline was based on the comments that Ange had made after the Livingston game. I pinpointed a few of the things. Like you say, the word unacceptable stood out for me as well, Brian. He reckoned that we lacked a cutting edge. He was complaining about the soft goal that we lost. Not working hard enough was something he says to get into the positions. And he went on to say, on performance alone, I think there will be some changes for sure. And that's obviously why we discussed where the changes might be yesterday. Today, we're looking also at Celtic doing the talking on the pitch, Jim, and we will be talking about the fact that footballers now take to social media to let their emotions out and let their feelings known. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of social media when it comes to Celtic players and footballers in general. But to ask you the same question that I opened up with, that I asked Brian, what do you think it is at the moment? Because some of these games look a lot tighter than they perhaps were when you look at the possession, the chances created, etc.
I think before I say anything, I don't want to be too negative. We're 9 points clear. So that's a good thing, because I think you don't want to get into that entitled area where people say, well, 9 points clear is good. This time last year we were if we can keep on their coattails, we'll do quite well. So it's a good thing to be 9 points clear. However, the big chap said it was unacceptable, so obviously it is unacceptable. I think that, I've said this before in the podcast, I think when we took 9 goals off Dundee United at Tannadice, and then we beat, we won 4-0 in the Glasgow Derby, at that point you thought every team in the league are going to fear us now. They'll be thinking, we could be on a hiding here, we better watch this. And then the defeat at St Mirren kind of like untangled that. And I think since then, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, the Hibs game being an obvious one, we've just got over the line. And as a football fan, you know what it's like. You're sitting there the other night, you're sitting there when a bad goal gets chopped off and there's 7 minutes of injury time, you're thinking, we're going to lose a daft goal here. But the thing about teams under Ange, we've never lost a daft goal late in the game. You know, we've never blown points right to the death. I mean, rivals have. We haven't. And you think, by the law of averages, at some point we're going to lose this late goal. But it's never actually happened. So I just think that even before the World Cup, we were putting teams to the sword. We need to get that cutting edge back as soon as possible. I had the argument, I had a debate with Alan Morrison a few weeks ago, and Alan was talking about the stats of the things, and I was just really frustrated a number of times. I mean, we're really good to watch, we're really good on the eye, we play a lot of good football, but once we hit that, 18, 20 yards out, we're hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And the number of times we played these wee kind of dinky balls over the top against Ross County, and I was going to say, please stop doing that. And Alan was saying, well, you know what, if that comes off, then the chances are increased. No, just find the space, shift it and shoot all the time. And I watched the Aberdeen game on my own on the telly last Saturday, and I shouted at the telly 3 times, "Go on, stop doing that! Go on, stop doing that!"
I thought you were shouting at the telly because maybe Kevin McCluskey and I were on the screen, because we were watching along with you there, Jim. Thankfully, it wasn't us; it was getting the IR.
Just shoot, and it's a major bugbear of mine that maybe not even just Celtic. Number 10 football players can't hit the target for 20 yards. You train all week so that when it comes to Saturday or the whatever day you're playing, you execute these things. You hit the ball when you get it on target, and you never know, you might score a goal, or it might get a deflection, or the keeper might spill the ball, or something. And the first decent shot we had comes 3 minutes for the end, and we score the goal. And you watch the game the other night, Aberdeen game. The guy shoots, the goalkeeper spills it, he gets a rebound, it's a goal. We need to shoot and shoot more often, and our shooting has to be better. So I'm not too convinced it's down to the strikers, because everyone has to contribute. And we've got players who have a dig. Jota has a dig, Turnbull has a dig, Hatate has a dig, O'Reilly has a dig, Juranovic when they play. These guys all have a dig. Wilson the other night, a couple of good digs from outside the box. We need to shoot more, and our shooting has to be better. There's maybe issues about the confidence of Kyogo, but again, he scores a goal. So, if you score a goal every game you play, you can't argue with that. But we get 3 points against Aberdeen, and we get 3 points against Livingston, and we move on. But it's a concern that we're not putting teams away. And if you don't put teams away, they get more and more confident as the game goes on. And that's what I'm saying, that, if we'd have played Livingston after the 9-0 game, we'd have came to Celtic Park thinking, if we get out here with a 2 or 3-0 defeat, we'll be doing well. Whereas there's 7 minutes of injury time, and they're right in the game.
Yeah.
And that's been the change for me. And there's maybe a number of players maybe not playing the way they played in the start. Jota, for me, Jota was outstanding in the first maybe 6-7 games of the season. But the other night, these kind of exaggerated step overs he was doing, it was like watching Riverdance. You just do the simple things, get the ball in the box, have some shots. I think we're a really good team, and we're really good to watch. If we can crack that, 20 yards for goal thing, and I just think we need to shoot a bit more. And if we shoot a bit more, we'll score more goals. And I've got a very simple view of football: shoot a bit more, and you'll score a few more goals. And I think we will give a team a doing at some point in time. But I think the law of averages, if we don't kill teams off, the law of averages, somebody will sneak a goal against us, and it'll cost us points.
Eventually. Yeah, I like the point you make there about the fact that we completely dismantled Dundee United 9-0, and it could well have gone into double figures. The nearest challengers get absolutely obliterated as well. And I think it's a decent point that Jim makes, Brian. Teams are going to be looking at that saying, we could easily be on the end of that. Hibs got it. They got absolutely smacked 6-1. And then you look at these last 5 fixtures that I'm talking about and focusing on here, and they're a lot tighter, even though a 4-2 oftentimes is an easier scoreline than it would suggest. 2 of those goals were in the last minute. That was a really tight game. And if we look at shooting, I think it is the quality of the shots as well. So over the 5 games, 118 shots. 118 shots over the 5 games. So on average, we're about 23 and a half shots a game. And we have scored in that period of the 118 shots 11 goals. So it's taken us almost 11 chances to score a goal. So it is the quality as well. But again, going back to previous teams, we had a scenario not that long ago, a few seasons back, where Stuart Armstrong could score goals from outside the box. Paddy Roberts could score goals. Moussa Dembele was very good at scoring goals. Lee Griffiths. And, I'm looking at players like O'Reilly for a wee bit more. He's not scored this season. I know Turnbull, that's part of his game, but he's not really getting the games. Is that a concern for you, Brian, that we're not sometimes just opening teams up? Or is it difficult because there's 22 legs behind the ball and it's trying to get through that and negotiate it?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think there is times like one of the reasons I never do pre and post matches is because I'm far too emotional, like too excited. And like Jim, I was screaming during the Aberdeen game for somebody just to shoot, and eventually maybe I did. So I get that point. But yeah, I think it is sometimes that it's trying to be too calculated. But again, it goes back to it. Like, if you look at the chances against Livingston, and I take Jim's point, we won the game, we're still 9 points ahead. But my worry is at some point, we're not going to have 6 chances to score 1 goal. And I think this is what Ange's thing is. Like, so if you look at it compared to last season, we're better. Or we were, like, the start of this season was better than the start of last season. But I think so far, the past 5 games, we've not been quite as sharp as we have been. And I think Ange's continually looking for improvements, which is the way you want to be, right? You don't want to just be as good as you were, you want to be even better. So I think that's where the frustration's coming in a wee bit. Now, it's like we'd be in a much worse position if we had scored, if Livingston had scored the late goal to be a draw, or we dropped points. So it is brilliant we're in this position, but I don't want to say concerned, but I just think that we need to be far more clinical. It was really apparent in Europe, and some of that was just into individuals missing chances and squaffing at chances. That was the reality, because we're cheating the chances. We're only burying them. But you go, right, well, it's Europe, it's Real Madrid, it's Leipzig, etc. I understand. But against Livingston, that was an own goal and then a Kyogo goal, and with all those chances, that could have finished 1 each. I mean, for them goals. So it's just things like that. Like, I just want it to be more clinical, kind of all over. And I do agree that maybe the midfielders need to chip in a bit more, but at the same time, if the strikers are more clinical, then, because even when Yakimakis, when he came on, had a couple of chances, wasn't quite there. You feel maybe he's a confident player. So I think you'll see maybe whenever we've had a wee challenge with it, a wee setback, and just sort of reset it, and we seem to have come back stronger. So I don't imagine it's going to be some sort of crisis. I think it's just maybe a wee bit in form, maybe a wee bit of lack of confidence. Maybe it's just the case the past couple of games they've sat in so much, it's been hard to actually find the space in the box. So I'm not overly concerned, but I think that there's a few bums going to get kicked at training off Big Ange, I would imagine.
No luck. We're going to continue to bring in the comments. Thank you very much for getting involved. You're commenting on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, it is now exclusively Celtic content on the Acsom YouTube channel. All the other stuff we do will be elsewhere on A State of Mind in the new year. Big day today. Find out from 4 where the single has placed on the UK official charts. I assume you're aware the position that's been mentioned all week is the iTunes chart, not the official UK chart. Yep, that would be a huge achievement if we were to get into the official charts. I think that there would have been more of a chance. This is me talking to a lot of bands over the last couple of years that have been in and out of the studio. Had we done a digital release and a physical release, and that's obviously why we've been talking about the iTunes charts, because it was digital only. But had we done the physical, I think there would have been a bigger chance, because what bands do now is you can do the bundles, Brian. I don't know if you were aware of this. So you go into a website now, say Liam Gallagher releases a single, and you can buy a bundle, and as long as the single's part of the bundle and there's a t-shirt in there, etc., each item that's sold counts towards a chart placing. So you can buy a single which comes with a T-shirt and a different version of the single, and that counts as 3. Interesting. So if you look at Liam's albums fairly recently, there was bundles, and you could buy Live Down the Thames and Live at Hull, and it was all just a ploy to get you to number 1. So yeah, we were aware of that, but it was just time, really, because producing the video, getting the song re-recorded and getting it out there was difficult enough. Maybe next year we'll do that on next year's single. Now, when we're talking about the Glory and the Dream, the charity weekender, before we move on to the St Johnstone game and everything else that's been happening, Jim, we had an opportunity during the World Cup. I'm sitting in the studio with Lawrence, and I says to him, we could sit here for 2 hours and nobody's going to watch us because the World Cup's on, and Argentina are playing, and Messi's going to win the World Cup, and it's a really, really good, showcase, France v Argentina. Why don't I just play this archive footage that Jim Orr gave me? So I pressed play on it, and it was the Save Our Celts material, Jim. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. And it was Joe Beltrami and Brian Dempsey and Terry Cassidy and all these great and not so great names and faces. And I played it to the watching audience during the World Cup. But I just want to go back on that because it was largely under the radar, Jim, simply because of the time that it went out. And obviously you and I have already worked on the proper, fully polished version of that will drop onto the YouTube channel in the new year. But take us back to that time. Joe Beltrami, what a speaker he was, what a narrator Brian Dempsey was as well, watching that footage back.
You youngsters in your pop charts. Brian Dempsey and his Buffon. I mean, it's a whole kind of... we organised a couple of meetings and had to get people along, and I was the guy charged with finding some people. So we had a well-known journalist who was going to chair the meeting who backed out a couple of weeks before it was on because he felt as if he didn't want to be aligned with kind of Celtic fans. So and it just so happened that the previous day was a letter in the Glasgow Herald from Joe Beltrami, a really long letter, slot on the board. And I thought, he's quite a high-profile guy, I should maybe phone him and see if I can get him to come along. Because when you're doing this kind of stuff, you don't really think about, this is Joe Beltrami, who's like, back in the 60s in Glasgow, it was get Beltrami. That was the kind of saying that people had for you youngsters out there, basically. So he was a criminal lawyer for the bad guys, basically. So get Beltrami. So I phoned Joe Beltrami's office, and then they asked you the question, like, who's calling? And it's one of the first things I said out loud. It's Jim Orr from Save Our Celts. And it sounded ridiculous when I said it out loud. And I could tell that the person on the end of the line was thinking, that sounds ridiculous as well. What do you mean? That's a Celtic supporters campaign. I'll put you through. And this big booming voice comes on. Yes, Mr. Orr, how are we going to get rid of this board then? You thought, well, obviously he's a kindred spirit. And I get to go and see him the next day, and he spoke for 2 hours about how in the 50s, Bob Kelly was this and that. So he came along, and as you say, he was quite a kind of larger-than-life character, and managed to get Brian Dempsey to come along, and maybe Jim Craig and Wally Wilson, who was the main guy behind Save Our Celts, spoke, which was amazing because he's an ordinary guy, stands up in front of 400 people and talks away. And Jay Dunbar, Not the View, great guy, he came along as well. And then through Brian Dempsey, he managed to get Tom Grant, Jimmy Farrell to come along. So that was the panel that day, and they all spoke and answered questions. And then about 10 months later, we did it again, and we convinced Terry Cassidy to come along, because up to that point, he was never going to entertain anything we were doing. So he came along, and a guy called Professor Tom Carberry, who was interested in the new stadium, because he was another guy who kind of went to the letter in the Herald, and he was slating the board of it, plans for Cambus Lang, and it was a nonsense, etc. And we had Peter Rafferty, who was the affiliating secretary at the time, and a guy called Brendan O'Hara, who was part of Not the View guy, who wanted to become an MP. So yeah, and it went quite well. So that's the footage of those two events, and it is interesting looking back. I actually did see it because at half time in the World Cup, I kind of seen what was happening in Acsom, and I had the radio, and we've actually got an advert for Benelli Bertie on the radio. So that was on, and I'm watching this footage, and the World Cup was on. So I had all this stuff happening. So that was last Sunday. Yeah. So hey ho.
I'll tell you what, Jim. You're an activist. to do all that and be involved on all that in the early 90s. It's great to watch. And as I said earlier, we're going to have a really shiny edited version. Jim and I have already done the interview for it. And then, further down the line, Jim, someone else gave me unseen video footage of someone standing with a camcorder. And it was at the Celts for Change movement when they went over to Ireland. So there's another chunk of history that is going to end up on a channel for everybody who remembers the dark old days of the 90s. The Celtic Daz, I think they're now called. We've got a user on Facebook coming in. The Malcontents, that's right. In fact, didn't you receive a letter from Celtic? I'm not sure who from, calling your movement an embarrassment at that time. Was it Chris White?
Chris White said that,
yeah.
You get lucky enough. I think you can understand their point of view without spending too much time on old stuff. I mean, if you're on the Celtic board, if you have been handed your shares down from generation to generations, you think you're right, everyone else is wrong. So if you were in their shoes, I think you might come to things, come to their conclusions as well. So, hey-ho. Long time ago.
We got through it, Jim. We got through it. Facebook user, sorry, I don't know who it is, but if you do go through that wee registration process, your picture and name will come up. What a song. Thanks for your feedback there. And Gordon as well, Gordon Coney, afternoon lads, hope you have a good Christmas when it comes. I hope that for everybody tuning in, it's a time of year after some of the things we've had to deal with globally over the last couple of years that you really should enjoy that with your friends, family and everyone within your community as well. Robert Hyland, I'll say it again, really like the violin on the single. Who played it, Acsom? Girl from the Proclaimers. Well, the bass player who is currently touring with the Proclaimers, Robert, he co-wrote the song back in 87, but the player that you are referring to is actually Stephen Dowling, who played the fiddle on the song. It was a real collective. The Wakes are a phenomenal band. Paul Sheridan is a multi-talented individual, and I didn't do anything other than put them together. That was it. Ryan Kelly, does anyone know when a song was played during the game the other night? It sounded great, and I think it'd be good on match days. It was quite early doors because I got, when you look around at empty seats, so it was quite early doors, and the stadium wasn't quite full at that stage. But apparently it's going to be played again tomorrow, so hopefully it'll get played at half time when everybody is in the stadium. That would be brilliant. I read a story with interest this morning. Let's bring it up here, where in an unusual kind of move, Celtic will be playing in their away kit at home, but it's all for a great cause. And the charity has come out and thanked the SPFL clubs for taking part in this campaign, and it's a no home kit campaign, and it's Shelter Scotland who are setting this up and pushing and driving it, and I think it's a great initiative. I love my football jerseys, Brian, but people might look at Celtic playing at home in the away kit and say, why are they doing that? And then obviously it's raising awareness for the campaign. So Celtic will be wearing one of their away kits. Are you one of these superstitious people who think, I hope it's not the grey one, because if we wear that we're going to get beat?
No, well, I certainly hope not. Anyway, I might be after tomorrow if that's what happens, but let's not jinx it. No, I'm not too superstitious about it. And as you say, it's always these things are always great, and it's nice that Celtic and they can be quite cynical about Celtic and the board and the business side of things at times, but it's nice that there's still that charity ethos and we're doing things for a good cause. And just like Acsom, and I missed a charity weekender because I was doing some charity work with the local supporters club, which Acsom very kindly donated prizes to. So it's nice this time of year for it to do these charitable things. So it'd be good to see tomorrow. But yeah, fingers crossed it's not a grey shirt massacre. That would be a hideous way to end up. But I'm sure we'll be fine.
Let's not. Jim, what's your thoughts on that? Another great opportunity to raise awareness for a fantastic initiative, and again, this is on the back of the foundation raising almost 400 grand for the Christmas campaign, which was just astonishing.
Anything that raises money is good. And just thought of when you said that there, Brian, I'm thinking a bit smashy and nicey there. It was like, I can't do that charity thing for doing that charity thing. So, notwithstanding
no,
that,
I don't like to talk about it. I don't like to talk about it.
No, that's good smashy that you're doing on that stuff. Well done, mate. Good, not half. Now then. I am superstitious. So,
took that too far, Jim.
I know, I am superstitious. So I don't think that's a good idea. By all means, raise money for charity. By all means, do what you want to do. But yeah, I'm quite superstitious. So I don't like the idea of no home kit. That's not good. But yeah, hopefully they raise lots of money for charity. Yeah, good.
For sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned a grey jerseyed massacre, which reminds most people who were into English football in the 90s of Man United going to the Dell and getting absolutely pummeled in the first half and changing their jerseys. It was one of those infamous performances. I think they changed into blue and white in the second half. The reason I'm bringing it up is because we were playing Southampton, and apparently Southampton are showing interest in our young winger, Lil Abada, who I thought made a huge difference when he came on against Aberdeen, Brian. He really did. There was a directness to his play. I think that he really, for some reason, he's got a really good understanding with Tony Ralston. They work really, really well down the right-hand side. And it was cutting open the Aberdeen defence. What we spoke about before, that cutting edge wasn't there, of course, but we were creating the chances. And I think all season we've been talking about some of the comments Ange made about don't get too attached to your heroes. We're going to have to be bold, and that's in the incomings and in the outgoings. I'm not ready to lose Avada, O'Reilly, Hatate, Kyogo. I'm not ready to lose these guys. But it is no surprise that a team like Southampton, who are, will have millions at their disposal, are interested, because over the piece, Abada's been sensational since he's came to the club.
Oh, yeah, tremendous. It goes back to a point I made, I think, a couple of weeks ago with Al. And I said that when you look at guys like that, coming the team at 19, playing first team football, if we sell him, it's got to be for a large fee. Given his age, given the length of his contract, given his ability, he's a full international. So if you're going to sell him, you have to maximise it. I'll be gutted if he goes, but if he goes for a very, very healthy profit, you can sort of go, right, okay, I trust an Ange to replace it. What is interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we look at Premier League clubs sniffed about. I think Bass and Lowell and O2 for youth have both looked to Premier League teams, which raises the question: what if they're good enough for a Premier League team? Why are they not good enough to get time for Celtic? Which is probably a bigger topic. I dare say we'll talk about it later. But I think any club looking at Celtic just now, looking at how we play, look at the way the players play, will be saying, right, these guys can fit straight into most of their teams, because it's the way Ange's got his playing. It's one touch, fast movement, very clever, interchanging, and these are the qualities that are going to go to these teams down south and do well. Especially with guys like O'Reilly, you mentioned as well, with his physicality. He's big, he's athletic, he suits a part. I think Abada would do well. Would I like to lose any of those guys like you? No, not really. But I think it's just the nature of the beast at the moment. And if it makes sense financially, then you have to say, I don't think we'll be in a position to knock it back. But we have to maximise this. It's the same way Juranovic, if he goes. I said before, anything less than 25 million for Juranovic, I would knock back. If I'm honest, I think you have to hold out to maximise it. Imagine if we sold Abada for like 8 million. I think that'd be robbery for a player of his position. If he was playing the Championship down south, he'd be triple that. So I think we have to hold a high standard here if we are going to sell these guys. Hopefully we don't. And I think Celtic are, financially responsible enough that we're in a good position that we don't need to sell anybody. All said, the offer's too good, but it has to be too good. It can't just be, 6 million. Here, have him. That's not good enough for us anymore. Has to be higher.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Jim, I'm going to come to yourself because Abada's a player you have discussed on the Acsom Bulletin for some time. I think it's a good point Brian makes there, because you've named Brian, you've named Ewan O2, and he's had a very successful loan deal at Clyde, where he was a standout at Clyde. But it's that old, as you say, it's a really deep discussion that you could have over a number of podcasts on a Celtic State of Mind, in and around how we are developing players, how we're able to get them from that B team into the first team. And at the moment, it's certainly not working. And other clubs are coming in. I mean, Leo Held left, and we've also lost Okaflex, we've lost Dembele, and various other players, many of whom have gone.
It's in for Lol, isn't it? I think it's Brentford that's still interested in Lol.
Yeah, so Brentford, tore up the traditional route of having the academy producing their own, but they will handpick players from other clubs, and they see that as being a more beneficial way of developing and bringing in talent. But interestingly enough, some people might be listening to this and they might not have a great knowledge of UNO2. The only reason I do is because of the Clyde boys who used to come into the studio raving about him. But he's 20-year-old. Lila Bader's 21-year-old. Now, so that shows you if your pathway, Jim, is at Celtic, it can sometimes hit a brick wall. If it's elsewhere, it could be a Lila Bader scenario where he comes to Celtic with a lot of senior football under his belt, international recognition under his belt, but we're not able to provide that. So tell me your thoughts about Abada first and foremost, and also where we're going wrong in terms of developing our youth players.
I've been racking my brains in the past 2 or 3 minutes when we were talking, going back to the football strips, that there was a famous game in England in the early 70s. I think it was maybe Stoke and Arsenal scored a goal that was clearly offside at the time. And Stoke were wearing white strips that day, all white. And during the games back in the 70s, there was guys walking around the park wearing white coats that sold programmes or something.
Right.
And the linesman thought the guy with the white coat was a Stoke player. So he was playing the Arsenal guys on side. Big controversy at the time. Anyway, I said a few weeks ago, football players now are a wee bit like chess players. Don't get too attached. They're there to perform a function, and that's it. And I also think there's an optimum time to sell players. I don't want to see Abada go. I think he's been, last season he was one of the major factors to win the league. I think the last couple of games he's been great. He's got lots of energy about him. I don't think he's the most skillful player in the world. He doesn't beat a player with skill. He might beat him a bit of pace, and he's very direct. He's good. And with Ralston there, I think they've got a really good partnership. I think he gets the ball and he waits for Tony. Where's Tony? There's Tony. I'll pass to Tony. And then he moves himself into the box, I think. Yeah. And what was noticeable the other night, I was quite surprised when they brought on Bernabe. I thought they'd brought on Jens and maybe shifted Starfield out to the right. Because Taylor, great season that he's having, he looked really, really awkward there. So a couple of times with the ball on his right foot, cut back inside because he couldn't cross the ball with his right foot. That's another bugbear of mine. The fact that players are so one-footed, apart from Messi, players are so one-footed. Basically, they should be better than that. And I just think we lack a bit of physicality in the team. This is a different point, and we off to now. And with Taylor and Abada down that right wing the other night, and Bernabe coming in as well, I'm thinking Livingston, big physical team, we could be in trouble here. Anyway, that was a big major tangent off there. Try and keep Abada as long as we can, but become a time where we'll get an offer that's too good to refuse. And if Southampton or someone else come in with a silly bid of 25 million or something like that, you need to take it. It's that simple. I don't want us to lose our players. I think Yakimakis is getting treated rather harshly these days. Said before, or Ange said before, it's not his job to keep players happy. And Africa said, well, it is. Because there's loads of issues that players have. And I'm not saying that you have to keep them happy in every single issue. But if I'm Yakimakis, I'm thinking, I should be getting more minutes here. And I'm not. And every time I do play, I tend to score or I make things happen. Another night there, he comes on, he get 10 minutes. And Kyogo, great, he scored the goal, but he did virtually nothing the whole game. If I'm Yakimakis watching that, I'm thinking, I should be on the pitch here. And the first thing he did the other night, I don't know if you noticed it, somebody fizzed the ball at him and he rose up and he just chested it and he brought it down and he put a really good pass. So the guy's really talented and I don't understand why he's not on the team more. And I'll be dead annoyed if he goes. And if he goes for something like 7 or 8 million, I'll be dead annoyed. I know people are saying, well, he's 28 years old, however old he is. Top scorer in the Dutch League last year, 2 years ago. Top scorer in the Scottish League. In any market in the world, that's worth a lot more than 7 or 8 million that's getting quoted just now. Yeah. I think he has to play tomorrow. And he has to get some games under his belt and he has to play at Ibrox. Definitely, because he's the guy that's made the difference in those games. The 3-0 game last year, outstanding. And he wasn't meant to be playing in that 4-0 game, but thing we get injured. Kyogo got injured in the first 10 minutes, didn't he? Then he came on. Yeah. So for me, I think he has to play in those games. But in terms of to answer the question, I think Abada's been fantastic. But if you get a silly offer, then you have to sell him. And I agree with Brian that if you offer something like 7 or 8 million, that's for one leg. Forget it. Come back another time. I think so. But yeah, for me, don't get attached to the players. Said before, I'd love it in a couple of years' time if Yota's still there and Kyogo's still there and Hatate and O'Reilly and Abad and all these kind of guys. But the reality is that they won't be. Certain players will be there. I think Greg Taylor will still be there. Callum McGregor will still be there. Tony Ralston will be there. You get players where you think, well, they're never going to leave because of certain circumstances. But the Yotas of this world, because of how he's played the last couple of games, I'm thinking, has his head maybe been turned? Because you've also got that situation where Juranovic, they've been talking about that for a wee while now. He's maybe on his way. He's went to the World Cup. He's mixing with guys that get paid silly money. And he'll be coming back saying, you see what these guys are on. And football's a short career and you have to make as much money as you possibly can. And although they're our players and you love these kind of guys, don't get too attached.
Well, Jim, I am attached. That's the problem. I am attached. However, I totally
don't
understand.
Don't buy Matt O'Reilly pyjamas, but never buy Matt O'Reilly pyjamas because somebody else is doing that, and that's a bad idea.
Is that right?
Fanboy.
I'm sure there's a few. I'm sure there are a few. There is going to be a time in the future, Brian, like you said before, where we look back on this group of players that have left, Hepburn, Morrison to Bayern Munich, Angelini down south. There's been players going to Blackburn, Liverpool, Ben Doak, all these guys. And we'll have a look back to see, where are they now? There'll be a group of players, where are they now? And some will make it and some won't, and that's the nature of football. But at this moment in time, much bigger issue with regards to the pathway to the first team. But picking up on some of the points that Jim's raised there, and this is in relation to the tagline, because it is around Giakoumakis. It's about the fact that players these days, if they're unhappy, can put out an cryptic Instagram tweet, even if it's just an emoji, and it gets everybody talking and it becomes a story, and all the blogs write about it and all the podcasts talk about it, because that's exactly what we're doing. But at the same time, like Jim, I understand the frustration that Giakoumakis must be feeling. I had a chat with Big Lawrence before the game there the other night against Livingston, and Lawrence disagreed with me, but I feel that he's entitled to be a bit frustrated. And I watched a compilation of his goals back there, and a lot of the goals that he was scoring, I'm looking at some of these chances that we're not converting at the moment, Brian, because my question yesterday was, what type of striker do we need? And maybe the type of striker that's going to convert a lot of these chances is sitting on the bench. What's your take? Should he start tomorrow?
He should certainly start tomorrow, 100%. And go back to my initial point in the show, I think Kyogo's been off form. I think he's been off form for a while. And as much as he's an excellent player, and I love him, and I think he's been exceptional for us, if you're out of form and you've got a Giakoumakis sitting on the bench, he should be starting. It shouldn't be the case that just because he's played well, let's keep him. If Giakoumakis is ready to go, he has to start. I think if he would have started against Aberdeen and Livingston, the games would have been more comfortable. Now, I'm not saying Giakoumakis is better than Kyogo or any of that madness. I'm just saying in certain games where you just need somebody to stand in the box, in a big unit and be in the right space at the right time, I think he's your man for it. I agree with Jim as well. I think against Rangers he has to start. I think he's exactly what you need. Anytime he's played against them, he's absolutely bullied their back four himself. He causes all sorts of problems, even he's not doing much on the ball. He's just a big nuisance off the ball. They always have to watch him. He can move, he does this great thing when the ball comes in and he kind of uses the defender's body to balance himself. He's steady for a strike. It's brilliant. He's set up for it. So I would definitely, I think he will start anyway, because I think there's going to be big changes tomorrow, I would imagine. I think just a wee warning shot for the players to say, look, I know that there seems to be like a sort of favourite 11, but if you're not doing it, you'll be dropped. So I would imagine you've seen. And just going back to the thing about some of the youth players we're talking about. You talk about Giakoumakis being frustrated. Kyogo's not scoring, he's still on the bench. You imagine being a Boss-in-Law or a Dane Murray or an O2, and you go, Starfelt, Jens, Carter Vickers there. Welsh is a wee bit out of favour. I might have a chance here. And then they sign another player at 22 to develop. And you go, well, hold on a second. If you're signing this young guy, he's not going to come in and, I don't imagine, it might be wrong. He's not going to come in and start ahead of Starfelt and Jens. He's there for the future. He's 22, which is quite old for a Japanese youngster because they don't tend to start playing till later. If you're Boss-in-Law, you're going to say, well, I'm 19, turning 20.
What chance have I
Can
got?
I not get the minutes? Why, if you're beating somebody 3-0, can I not come on for the last 15 minutes? If you're Rocco Bata, the same sort of thing. You know, maybe some of your wingers are out of form. How can I not get a game? So I think there's things there, and if they're just not good enough, then they need to go. I don't see the point. It's something that I've been critical of Celtic for a long time. Is this stockpiling of players and young players, and you know, Scott Robertson was an example. He's 21 now. I know Ange wasn't happy that he went to the press and said he was leaving. He probably, I wouldn't want to be him that day anyway when Ange came in for that press conference. But I can understand the example. It's like, why keep him there? He's 21. You know, if he's 19, if he's going to play or no, there's potential there, and they have to start getting minutes to these boys. And I wonder if it's maybe Ange has been overly cautious, or if he just doesn't think any of them are good enough. In which case, just let them go and start again.
Yeah, and
I think
that's
it's a hard balancing act, Brian. I think it's a really hard balancing act. It's all about winning games of football, and what you do, well, in my opinion, is you always play your best team. So if you always play your best team, you want to win a game of football. And if you, I don't think it's the fact that maybe they're not good enough. It's just the fact that there are players there who are better than them, and there are players there that are more experienced than them, and that's who you're always going to play. Because
you're spot on. But what I'm saying is, this young guy they're signed in, the Kobayashi, is he going to be better than Starfelt or Carter Vickers or Jens, or is he a development guy? And if he is, why have you a defender that wants to be developed, and they're saying another defender to develop? He's in the same position. It's not like,
of course. But I've said before lots of times that basically guys like Lowe, that's the kind of guy that you really like to get out on loan if he possibly could, to a St Mirren or a St Johnstone or something like that. So they can play in the league. And I know that's easier said than done, because the teams have to want them in the first place. But if you've got somebody playing, I mean, like the boy, what's his name, Montgomery's playing with St Johnstone these days. There's a good example. So he's getting minutes basically. So if your Lowe can go to St Johnstone or Dundee United or something like that, then you get a chance to see them playing up close. You get a chance to play in the same league that you actually play in. It's a real balancing act. At the end of the day, if you're a football player, you're looking after yourself. That's basically it. You want in the team. You want the guy that's playing in your position not to be on form, to get injured, whatever, because you want people to get into that team. And from a fan's point of view, fans in the main are quite simplistic. They want to build up all these really good players so that if he gets injured, we can play this other guy. But if you're a Yakimakis and you're only getting 10 minutes and 15 minutes here and there, you're not happy. And Ange has to keep him happy because he's a vital part of the team. If you're a James McCarthy and you're not happy, and I'm Ange, I'm thinking, well, I'm not bothered if you're not that happy because I don't see you as a vital part of this team. Whereas Yakimakis, I think, is a vital part of this team. In terms of kind of player that we need, it's a kind of, for me, a kind of Lee Griffiths type of player. Not Lee Griffiths, used to add, but somebody who's in the box, is like Fox in the box, and who's got a dig on him and can score goals from 30 yards. We don't have that kind of player. He'd be great, somebody like that. You know, but I think we also do need a big physical presence, because a lot of the times we're trying to play around teams, and sometimes you just have to play over teams and have a big physical presence in there, because that, if you don't have that, then that cuts your options down a bit, I think.
No, I think you're right, and I do think Yakimakis is extremely important to this side. But with regards to some of the points that's been made there, going back to Scott Robertson for a start, Brian, he's at an age where he should have played 100 games of football for Celtic.
Yeah,
you know, and he's nowhere near it. He's played one game, and that happens so often. And I guess what Jim's saying there, at the end of the season, if we lost the league by a point, but we could say, but we've developed 4 players and they all got 20 games, what would the fans want? So although we're talking about it and we're stripping it all down, eventually I think in the long term that would benefit you. But it's all about, you've got to try and balance it, but also win the league. You've got to try and develop the players, but also win the league. And I totally understand how difficult that must be.
Also, you can be quite cynical, Paul. You can be quite, sorry for butting in. You can be quite cynical with the whole thing. Do you need a youth academy? Do you need younger players? Do you? Or do you just go and cherry pick other teams? Because you've got so much money.
That was the question I was just going to ask Jim. I was going to say, it feels like we should do this. It almost feels like we should do the Brentford thing, where we don't bother and we sort of look, we're a bit into pick from that. I feel like I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, we always feel like we're kind of half doing it. You know, if we're saying we're an academy and that's going to produce the players at the highest level, then do that. Or do Brentford and stuff do and have your sort of system and then find the best players and bring them in. Yeah, can I do a mix of the two of them? And I'm not sure either's working 100%.
I think the club would.
I think it's actually sorry, Paul.
I think the club might. That's not at all. I think the club might argue that the academy has been a success. They might say, well, we produced Sean Maloney, we sold him for X amount, we produced Aidan McGeady, we produced Kieran Tierney, and over that period of time, that has at least broken even in terms of the players that we've produced. Then you look at today's team, and you've got James Forrest, Cal McGregor, captain in the side, Tony Ralston playing loads of games. So they might argue that it's been a success. I don't know what you think about that, Jim.
Something I'm a wee bit uncomfortable about, and maybe I'm just being overly sensitive about this, is I saw on Twitter there, they've got kids in the under-10s. So they're in at Celtic Park and they're getting a picture taken and their names in the jerseys and all this kind of stuff. And I just think, the success rate of that is like minimal, and you've given them a taste and they must be thinking, oh, this is the future. And they'll be so disappointed when they don't make it. And I've seen a few of these things on TV where they'll be like Crystal Palace was one of the things, looking at young boys and they don't make it. And for me, that's a wee bit, they're not at that kind of level yet. They haven't signed for Celtic, basically, and you've dragged them in and all the parents are all dead excited, which is great, brilliant, fantastic. But when it comes at the discarded, I think the level of disappointment is significantly greater than if they do that. And I think it is a balancing act in terms of getting back to the big team, whereby do you have all this youth coming through? Because they're all getting fed up, they're not getting a game. And then the club, we're saying, well, there's no pathway there for these guys. Of course there's no pathway, because we have to win every single game we play. And unless you're 3 goals up with half an hour to go, or you're putting the League Cup against a kind of, a Dumbarton or Raith Rovers or something like that, that's the only time you're going to get a game. Fact. So don't complain. That's how it's going to be. Unless, as you say, Paul, we give all these young guys a game and we end up losing the league, and then we'll get absolutely slaughtered. So it's not about bringing on young players. It's definitely not about doing that. It'd be good if somebody comes through. But football is the reason that we love football is like one game could change anything for one guy. He comes on and scores a hat trick, and all of a sudden he's a superstar. Mm-hmm. Back to the early 80s, Charlie Nicholas was a fantastic talent. He comes in the team, starts scoring goals in the first 2 games. He's in the team all the time. That could happen next week. Brian mentioned Rocco Vata. He could come in the team this week and score a hat trick. All of a sudden he's in the team. It's just a luck. A lot of the times how these things can kind of work out. But in terms of the question, we have to play the best team time and again. And reverting back to the last time I was on with Alan, and stats are great. I think the stats things, what I like about the stats is actually how they get the stats, not so much the stats themselves. How do they know that player ran that length or had these kind of interceptions? How do they actually know that? I'm fascinated by that. The actual stats themselves, I'm not too fussed about. And I think the last chat I had with Alan, he's talking about the Hibs game coming up. So this is going to be tricky. Tricky games coming up here because the number of turnovers or something like that. And you're thinking, well, Hibs will attack. And anyone that attacks Celtic Park, we'll hammer them. And we hammer them. And then we play Ross County and Alan saying things like, maybe we should leave Carter Vickers out, maybe help America. And you're like, no, because Ross County don't score goals. No, you play the best team. You play the best team all the time until you've got the games won. And what's good about the last couple of seasons is the 5 subs rule, whereby you can change half of your team or you can change all your attacking options straight away. And that gives us a big advantage as well. So always play your best team. And if youth don't get a chance, hey-ho, that's the sport that we're in. It's about winning. It's all about winning.
Talking about youth getting a chance, JP mentioned something yesterday that I was completely unaware of. Here's some stats for you guys. 14 years of age, 485 goals in 89 games for the AC Milan Academy. The player's name is Francesco Camarda. He was promoted to the Milan under-19s team for a friendly and he scored 2 goals. He's 14. 485 goals in 89 games. Wow. But let's hope, because there's no guarantees, let's hope that the player develops. This will take us into tomorrow's game. I'm bringing up a few comments as well. Andrew Galea had the song in his head all day. It is a grower. It definitely is. It gets under your skin. All the best from Tipperary, says Raymond Haddon. Keep up the good work and you have a great Christmas with your family and friends also. Gordon's back and asking what happened to Abelgard. He's not really been mentioned, so I'm not aware of an injury. But obviously he's not been on the bench. And Joseph McGonigal, greetings from Plymouth. Enjoy your Christmas holidays, everyone. We've got a couple of people watching from Plymouth, actually, Joseph. Keith Oakton comes in on a regular basis. He's from Plymouth as well. And on Facebook, guys, we've won every league game bar one, wearing the silver/grey jersey, by the way. The secret is to score more than the opposition. I watch the show every day, but I do think you can overanalyse at times just a wee bit. So thanks everybody for getting involved. Let's talk about the game tomorrow then. Last 5 minutes of the show. We've been talking a wee bit about Giakoumakis and his cryptic emoji Instagram post. Brian, does he start tomorrow for you?
Yes, absolutely. I think he would start. I'd be tempted to start Haksabanovic as well, in place of Jota. I agree with Jim. I think Jota looked a wee bit, I don't know if frustrated, but looked a wee bit out of ideas at times. So maybe, again, just a wee warning that no one's undroppable. Start Turnbull as well, in place of Hatate. I think, as much as I love Hatate, we spoke about it the other day, Paul, he's consistently inconsistent during games. So I would give Turnbull a shot, let him. I think he's always a goal threat as well. And I think probably the back four is going to pick itself. I was surprised Jens didn't start the other day. I thought he'd have started over Starfelt, but I suspect if Starfelt's back in the team, he doesn't tend to change the defence too often, so I'd imagine that would be the same.
Well, I'm going to ask the same question to Jim in relation to the Giakoumakis debate. And I know that we become more and more fond of players the longer they're out. The Bobo Baldy kind of springs to mind. Remember, he was out for ages. He became the best centre-half on the planet. Every week that Derek Riordan didn't get picked for Gordon Strachan, he became a better player. Talking of which, you mentioned Lee Griffiths. I was reading this morning that Waterford may be interested in taking him to Ireland, giving him a contract over there. Hopefully he gets it. Hopefully he goes over and scores loads of goals. What's your take on the Giakoumakis, Jim? You've kind of been in favour of him from what you've been saying today. Would you start him tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned earlier about players taking to social media. I'm trying to envisage the conversation that Big Ange will have with him, because, I mean, nobody understood what that egg time it was all about. Can you imagine Ange sitting down with him saying, so this, what does this mean? Nobody knows what it means. So Giakoumakis...
You would love to see that conversation, wouldn't you? You'd love to get
just egg timer? What does it mean? He's not coming to do that. Okay, I agree with that comment from Paul Dyatt. Giakoumakis for me should play. I agree with Brian. I think Jota could do with a wee rest. Haksabanovic, to me, is a bit more direct. Maybe when he gets the ball, he's not more direct than Jota. That's just nonsense. But just I like he gets the ball and he wants to take people on. He's got an eye for goal as well. If Ralston's not fit, is Welsh still injured?
I wasn't aware he was injured, but apparently so. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd play Jens at centre half and move Starfelt to right back. If that's the case, Abada still plays. Abada, Giakoumakis, and Haksabanovic. I'd leave Hatate alone. I think Hatate is okay. I like Hatate. It'd be good if Turnbull gets some more minutes, but that's the same conversation we just had 2 minutes ago. That it'd be good if certain players could maybe get the minutes. And it's great to have the option of these kind of guys coming off the bench. But I think you have to give them the time. The comment that came on in the 82nd minute. That's too late to make an impact. You have to give players, I think, half an hour at least. And maybe we should be making a bit more subs at half time, because we have so many subs, and that doesn't count in terms of the number of interruptions in the game. So that's an option as well. But in terms of tomorrow, I think same teams other night. If everyone's fit, great. Giakoumakis and Hacks are coming in for Jota and Kyogo. Yeah.
Fair enough. I have a question for you and Paul. See, just you were talking earlier about players getting chances, opportunities, maybe taking their luck. If Ralston isn't fit tomorrow, see, instead of moving Starfelt out of position, would you consider giving Ewan O2 a start? Because he's been playing right back for the B team, and there's an opportunity for the guy who's right back for the B team, who's linked to move away. Surely then he'd be first place to come in.
Have him on the bench. Have him on the bench. See how Starfelt gets on the right back. Always play the best team. I would always play the best players. Bringing that young guy in,
even out of position though.
Expectation. He plays for the B team. How good are the B team? What kind of league do they play in, etc. I think you want him on the bench, and I think if there's an opportunity to give the guy some game time, then that's an ideal time to give him. I just think that things are so tight, and that was the thing about a couple of seasons. Well, the season that they get stopped. I think if that season had continued, would have won the game with 5 or 6 games to go, and that's the ideal opportunity to play players. Whereas last season was really, really tight up until the second last game, so that was less opportunities for players. And I would always, my simplistic football philosophy, always play your best team, always play your best players. And if you get to a position whereby the game's won, then that's the time that you give guys opportunities.
Yeah, that was my biggest disappointment actually during many of the 9 in a row seasons where we were winning the league at a canter. I just don't think we were giving the boys enough of those opportunities, Jim. If you're 2 or 3 nothing up at home, give 15 or 20 to a younger player coming through. Kaiser comes in, he reckons, welcome to the show, Kaiser. We need a striker with aerial prowess, and I wouldn't disagree with that. Absolutely wouldn't disagree with that. And there's a couple of ideas being mooted, a link with Bohemians FC and Wrexham. And Andrew comes in talking about a club in Australia. There are nursery clubs, some clubs in European football who are developing youth players very, very well and getting to the point of getting them to 100 games by the age of 21 do have nursery clubs, and it's something that you'd need to look at the logistics. You'd also need to look at whether or not it's viable or even if it's allowed in Scottish football, but it's something that could well get your players at a higher standard than the 5th tier of Scottish football. That's been a very quick hour. I've got to thank everybody for getting involved. I don't always bring up as many comments as I would like, so apologies if there's loads of burning issues in the comment section. Keep putting them up there because we do try and get you involved as much as possible. It's coming up to Christmas. We are going to be covering the game tomorrow as per usual. We're going to bend it like Bertie on the Sunday at 12:30, and although we might not be live every day, we will have a 1 hour show every single day at 12:30 on the YouTube channel. Get yourself involved, and in the meantime I'm going to play you out with our charity single. If you haven't done it already, you can download it and stream it. The links are underneath this video. Have a great Christmas, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow on a Celtic State of Mind.
Over a century has passed since we first began our journey across the sea to find the glory in the dream. Just a tailor and a joiner and a brother built our team. Greeted sometimes with hostility, but more often with the light. The boys who rise and had to clear through troubled skies. After constant days of struggle, they arrived in paradise. This feels like heaven. This must be the dream. This feels like paradise. The best we've ever seen. The best we've ever seen. Even through the lean years, our support would flock in thousands. Countless trophies stand displayed for all to view. By side, brothers, sisters, we're united, and our children do the same. This feels like heaven. This must be the dream. This feels like paradise. The best we've ever seen. The best we've ever seen. The above club was formed in November 1887 by a number of Catholics in the East End of the city. The main objective of the club is to supply the East End conferences of the St Vincent de Paul Society to support those in the missions of St Mary's, Sacred Heart and St Michael's. Many cases of sheer poverty are left unaided through lack of means. A football club will be formed for the maintenance of the dinner tables of our needy children. This feels like heaven.